a quick, let's solve the tax problem, and not looking at the ramifications of that to the family, obviously in his situation, caused all kinds of problems that he certainly had not intended. Well, there's a propensity to hear a client and move fast to solve the problem, often too fast, without taking the time to really analyze all the various aspects you need. And there's too many times when a client says to an advisor, I need a will. Okay, well, let's go get you a will. I need a shareholders agreement. Let's get you one of those. I need some life insurance. Let's go get that for you. And not taking the time to look at the overall picture and all the particulars that go into that. From our perspective, succession planning involves 10 factors of what we call the succession matrix. And they're all interrelated and interconnected. And you need to know what the owner's motivation is. You need to understand how they're structured. You need to understand what the numbers are, obviously, and what their estate plan is. That's clear. And you need to understand things like the structuring and profitability of the company, the management team and how effective it works. Do they operate with a strategic plan? Is there a successor ready to go on day one? If not, do we have some kind of an in-between succession bridge type of arrangement? Are there family dynamics that come into play here? All these pieces need to be looked at. If you don't, all of a sudden you're going to quote unquote solve the problem and possibly create another one. A classic example of that was in the Wall Street Journal many years ago. There was a headline, "Henry wouldn't have wanted it this way." And it was about Henry Ford II, and he had died. And basically he had set up his plan where everything would transfer at his death to his spouse. And there's an unlimited marital deduction, so there'd be no tax. And he thought that's great. And as it was reported in the Wall Street Journal, his taxes that were estimated at $175 million at that point. And so the idea of being able to stretch out years before that would have to be paid sounded like a really good idea. And I would start off by saying there's many people who have that kind of plan, and it's a great plan. But in Henry's, it was not so great. And the reason was simple. His wife was in her 40s, and so were his 3 children. So by saying that she's got to die before they get anything, while it delayed the tax, it also may have literally disinherited his children. So a quick, let's solve the tax problem, and not looking at the ramifications of that to the family, obviously in his situation, caused all kinds of problems that he certainly had not intended. Well, I think typically it's the concern of moving too fast and not taking the time to ask enough questions and get all the facts and really get the information. I talked a little bit about that in that other situation and in the Henry Ford situation. But I think that sometimes it's a function of when you're on the clock and a client has paid you for an hour of your time or whatever. It doesn't matter whether the client can afford it or not. There's a tendency to kind of, let's move on because the clock's ticking. That's one of the reasons why we believe in charging on a project basis, so that a client has the freedom to say, I need to talk about that further. I need to explore it further. They need to dig in. And all too often, a client might think that they understood what the attorney or accountant was saying, and they didn't. I remember distinctly a client many years ago who was a really powerful, successful business owner. He was a Stanford grad, so very bright man, senior guy. And he would call me up and he'd say, I got to go meet with my attorney and I need to have you come along and translate. And I want you to watch my eyes, and when they glaze over, ask a question. Because this guy, the client, did not want to feel stupid in front of the attorney. That the attorney tended to use a lot of jargon, a lot of terminology, etc., that was foreign to the client, and the client felt a little intimidated by that whole thing. Again, I was fairly new in the game, but I knew I could ask the dumb question and let me be the guy who is the one asking the dumb question. It put me in a position where the client felt, hey, I can get my questions answered, but I'll do it through Hugh. Last thing you want there is for the stock answers, because we haven't asked enough questions. The client assuming that he understood the attorney assuming that the client understood that, and you end up with stock answers that aren't necessarily solving the issues that need to be solved.